Hi, how are you doing? It's so good to be back with you. And I'm very excited because in this episode of the show, we're going to be talking to Mahmood about his amazing new book, I Hate Numbers. And I'm going to be uh, asking him all sorts of questions about what's in there and sharing lots of tips and advice from Mahmood as well. So it's a really special show. I'm really, really proud. I mean, Mahmood's an amazing business partner, best business partner ever, and just super proud that he's got this fantastic book out. So how are you feeling about it, Mahmood?
I'm good, actually. I'm a bit nervous, actually, Joe, because I don't know if this is going to be very relaxed, like Richard and Judy type show, or if it's going to be like Joe Kilroy's Silk. I don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, I've got my Paxman on, but no, we're just going to enjoy it and celebrate the success, and also share some of the thoughts and the content with Business Growth Club members and viewers. So let's get started. Should we get some music on? We'll rock it out, and we'll be back in a second.
Let's get the old heart rate going. And we're back in the room.
We are back in the room. We were there, weren't we? We were there, we were dancing. So, Mahmood, I Hate Numbers, the title of your book, which is a brilliant book, and I was so chuffed to pre-read it before it came out, and just absolutely loved it. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, if you're a leader and you're watching this, you've got to have a look at Mahmood's book, because I just think Mahmood, it spoke to me. It's very clearly your voice and your thoughts, your sense of humour, and also your helpfulness and advice all the way through it. So a really brilliant read. What led you to write the book? What was the
That's
big
a great
motivation?
question, actually, Joe.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, as I was at a literary awards dinner, fantastic. This book has been a burning ambition of mine since I was playing in the playground doing that. I want to be a numbers finance person. I think what it was, actually, the idea came about is people write books for a number of reasons here. It's not for I'm going to be on the #1 bestsellers list, but any obviously publishing agents out there that want to take on the book, I'm not going to be embarrassed by it. I think it was just important for me because I know in my career that most people, when you say numbers, it's the pencil, it's the eyes, or it's watching paint dry. So it's really uninspirational for them, but that's really a shame because it's a necessary, I wouldn't even call it evil, it's a real necessary, interesting part of the business here. So it was me trying to say, okay, I'll do a podcast, all these other things here. Let me get the message out there. Let me make it accessible. Let me take my deep jargon ray gun out there and try and make it such that actually people can talk about these issues here without actually feeling that they're getting bogged down and losing the will to live. Plus, a bit of brand awareness, bit of getting the message out there. So yeah, that's probably the primary reasons behind it.
I love that there are practical, simple, pragmatic things for people to do. If for people who they may be confident or not confident at all in finances and numbers, but there's something in there for everyone to go away, have a look at, get better at, and you point them in the right direction really effectively, I think. So hugely well done. You start the book off with one of the things at the beginning is a quote from Michael Stipe, who's the lead singer of REM, which is, "My feeling is that labels are for canned food. I am what I am, and I know what I am." So how would you describe yourself?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. Now, I'm going to introduce a bit of honesty here. Not that I probably would say, as a balance, very similar to you, Joan, but I will say, by the way, at the risk of embarrassing them, you are a natural choice for me, by the way, because I know you're a fantastic business partner. You're the best business partner I've ever had. And I've had other business partners, by the way, folks, is because you're BS free. I know if you don't like something, you're going to say, yeah, okay, this could be better. I know that you'll give a straight answer to a straight question. I know that you're a fantastic innovator person. You've also got a strong bit running through your body about numbers and how important they are. And I just thought, you know what, this is a natural choice. I I wouldn't normally choose friends to do that, but I thought you're a natural choice to do that. So I think in terms of how people describe me, I remember when I was a teacher training college, somebody described listening to me like being spoken to by machine gun fire. So I've got a lot of intensity and energy that comes out. When I say I don't suffer falls, everyone looks at the world in different spectacles. However, if somebody comes to me and they want input and advice, like yourself, I just prefer to give it straight, no fluff and all the rest of it. So I think something's not as good as it should be. I've got a good sense of humour, or I like to think I've got a good sense of humour. And there's a lot of things you can do in your life where you can become engaging. I'm probably quite nowadays impatient of things. So I want things to happen like yesterday. So I'm very bad at taking my own advice. I would just say I'm a natural guy. I like talking to people of all different complexities, not just for work purposes. So I would say I'm probably a bit of a contradiction, a bit of a hybrid, a bit of a hard worker, not as a badge of honour, but just because you're not going to get anything done unless you actually sort of sweat a bit to get that equity. So quite complex. I mean, let me put it back to you, Joe. How would you describe me?
I think you are very hugely insightful and definitely very hardworking and committed. I mean, I remember when we were going through lockdown, the first lockdown and the subsequent lockdowns and what that meant for businesses, and the confusion and all the different things that the government were putting out. And you were there, as soon as something came out, a bit of information, a bit of news, you were out there helping businesses in real time, live, often the first person available to them, actually explaining what some of these things meant and how to access them and when they qualified and when they didn't. So I think very, very committed and actually really, really kind. So completely with you, no BS and full of kindness. And I think all of that, well, I know all of that comes through in your book as well, and a great sense of humour. So it really is a pleasure to read. It's always a pleasure to work with you. You know that, and I think that comes through when you read it as well. And chapter 1 is all about loving your numbers. Why is it important to you personally that entrepreneurs and businesses start to love their numbers, learn to love their numbers, and don't feel like they hate them or that there's something to be scared of?
I think what it is, Joe, I just found it in the whole world of business, entrepreneurship, and this is not just small businesses, this is big businesses as well. I've worked with very large multinational, international companies here, and it seems that finance is a siloed activity. It's like, oh, we need to, make sure we understand the customer, which is really important. We need to make sure we know what the product is, which is really important. We need to look after staff, which is more of a recent thing than it has been for the last 30 years. All those things are great. And then, the finance just sits over there. And I'm just thinking there's a massive disconnect here. And lots of businesses of different shapes and sizes of complexity are putting too much pressure on themselves, creating too much anxiety, making really poor decisions, not powering their business going forward. And they've got a responsibility to themselves and their team by actually just ignoring what the numbers are saying. They think it's just an annual exercise. We do a budget, let's yawn, it's done. And it's not. It's brilliant words that actually give flesh to what's happening in your business. It shouldn't be the only thing you look at, by the way, but I think far too many, I use the word coaches, advisors, think that all you need in life is passion, all you need in your business is to do X. And I think that's complete BS, really, because it's not just that. You've got to have numbers embedded as part of a primary goal. And that, for me, that's why I'm so passionate about it, because people are just getting rubbish advice.
Yeah, definitely. And also people being frightened of it. I know that well-being, of entrepreneurs is a really key thing for you as well. It is to me, it's something that we really value and want to help people because, as you've said before, the entrepreneurs, business leaders are their business's most important asset. And money mindset is part of that as well, which you also cover in I Hate Numbers. You address that. So what is it you think drives this sort of mindset around actually numbers are too complicated or scary or they're not for me? What's driving that, and how to flip it around? I mean, you share some great tips in the book. What are some that you could share with us today?
I think the reasons behind it, I mean, to try to redact it something more simple, it's a combination. It's a combination. I think that people don't necessarily talk about money, think about money, how to handle it and what it represents to them. Some people think it's quite icky. It's never been a topic that's really discussed in the family growing up. culturally, there might be something that's going on in your background. All these things come to it, and that shapes your attitude to it. I think also coming onto it there, in terms of this anxiety thing that you flagged up there, the anxiety tends to come when people don't actually know what's going on. There's an element of uncertainty. They don't know what lies ahead. They don't know, can I afford to do this? Can I take time off? And all those things, it's not necessarily the golden bullet as such, but numbers can actually give you that insight there. So I think into our reasons why people have that, as I said, it's family background, it's culture, it's whether they've worked or not. It's not just about education in schools, by the way, and I think that's unfair just to pin the blame at schools, for why people have rubbish attitudes to money. When I say rubbish, by the way, it's a different attitude. It's about not looking at it as a straitjacket thing, not looking at money as a dirty thing, but not actually being obsessed by it either. It's just having that right balance that says, I'm not afraid. You mentioned fear a few times, Joe. It's about not being afraid to have that conversation about talking about money, in the same depth that you might talk about customer relations, employee relations, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and you sort of segue that into resilience. I think there's a personal resilience, but also the business resilience as well. And we need that. We need to build resilience into businesses anyway, always, but never so much as now. After 2 years of pandemic and still some uncertainty with that, although fortunately it seems to be getting better with the way the world is at the moment, in terms of war, climate change, all of these things. How can anything from a small to medium-sized business to a big business, what should they be doing to really think about resilience in bigger terms?
I think we can take some lessons first of all. So the pandemic, when I say it's interesting, it's not interesting if you're in an illness, but from a business perspective, it's amazing if you look at the businesses that survived, the businesses that managed to prosper, the businesses that managed to be there going forward here. What they had underneath it, they had a good understanding of their costs. So they had the systems that captured, that not could only tell them what they were spending, where the money was coming from, how customers were engaging, but they could get that at their fingertips there as well. So a small, medium-sized business, there's no excuse these days not to get digitized and not have your raw material, your data invoices electronically accessible. The other thing is they knew how to read those numbers, so they knew what they meant. And that's another thing, again, that small, medium-sized and large businesses can adopt as well, is communication as well. So a lot of the resilient businesses managed to get messages out pretty quickly, had some degree of empathy with what was going out there. And those ones that did that, their speed of decision-making, those were not the only elements, but that was some of the key elements that contributed to their resilience. And I think all of us can learn from what happened and actually take that on and apply it to ourselves. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money either to do that.
Yeah. In fact, in the book you write, be gazelle-like in your actions.
Oh, the lion one.
Yeah, you said every morning when it wakes up, the gazelle knows that it's going to have to outrun the fastest lion. If it doesn't, it's going to get killed and eaten. So, and actually businesses need to be, agile, don't they? Like the gazelle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I remember rightly, and it's weird, I should not know perfect recall, it's whether you're a gazelle or whether you're a lion, just, be decisive and make your mind up what you're going to do.
Yeah, and that's what you're saying. It doesn't matter which one that you are. You've got to act.
Absolutely.
You've got to outrun. You've got to outrun the other. So the gazelle's got to outrun the lion, and the lion's got to keep chasing down the gazelle until he gets too tired. So actually keeping going is the real thing, isn't it? And calmness and decision making, and actually. Thinking about, it's like that for me. It's that you don't write this, but it's that Chumbawamba song. I get knocked down and I go up again. It's a bit like that, and and I think businesses have had to do that so much. And how do we make it so that it's easier to get back up again?
I think, listen, I see some great examples of you, Joe. I think of the people I've met in my life, by the way. Let's go slightly outside of the book, is that there aren't that many people that I can actually point to and say, you are a genuine example of hard work, application, kindness, and all the rest of it. So throwing that at you, I think what you can do is, first of all, not to overplay when you sometimes crash and burn. So those times when your day doesn't go well, or you've had a bad episode in the day, human beings, we tend to over-exaggerate them. And we tend to say, this went wrong, and we focus on that and we exacerbate it and we make it much bigger than it actually is. And we forget that actually in the other 14 hours in that day, things are cool, things are okay, they went well. So I think first of all, we've got to try and learn how to not to make an incident, you know, representative of what we are like as people. Secondly, is to acknowledge that you can mess up. You know, look, I've made many mistakes in my business life and I probably will carry on. I don't do
Me
that as a
too.
conscious
Yeah,
thing. I don't do it as
me
a conscious
too.
thing, but the way I've learned it a long time ago is from a finance point, as long as I've got the cash flow and I can afford to carry on, if I mess up and it's because of my bad decision making or something else has gone on, I'll look at it, I'll lick my wounds, I'll shout at the moon for a short while, and I'll get up and carry on because I'm driven by the fact that A, I don't want to get a proper job, but B, I believe in what I'm doing, and therefore that powers me to say, you know, knocks come with the territory. Every single person I know, from yourself, professional sports people, artists, if you ask them when they get to the top of what they consider their tree, they have to carry on working to maintain it. But B, they've had knocks galore, setbacks galore, and it's how you react to those disappointments that's really for me, is the key sense of character.
Yeah, and what I love as well is you talk about numbers as a language, and the numbers also telling the story of the business. So where did you come up with that concept originally about the numbers being the story of the business and the language of what's happening?
Just let me see, where did it come from? I probably would say, if I'm going to look it back, and by the way, folks, if you're just coming onto the show, obviously hit the hashtag replay so we know you're out there. Any comments, any thoughts you've got, please share them with us. And at the risk of being a bit woo, I think it's lots of things. So for me, when I was growing up, I didn't have that many sort of skill sets as such, but I was really good at numbers. I was really good at mental arithmetic, blah, blah, blah. And I was always had a strong sense of helping people. So learning how to talk to people and communication was good. I used to be a teacher in a former life as well. And therefore, I think a combination of teaching, training, other things I've done in my life, for me, trying to explain something to an audience that aren't necessarily professional accountants, you know, you have to learn how to make it accessible. And therefore, I'm just thinking, I look at it, well, numbers are basically just another language set, aren't they? People explain things in words. You can also explain things in numbers as well.
Yeah, and you know, using budgets. So, you know, do you think every business needs to have budgets? Are they really necessary? And what is a budget anyway?
Oh, well, that's an interesting point. Let me give you one example. If you take something like IKEA, for example, Joe, IKEA is an organisation that doesn't really believe in budgeting as a main performance system there as well. They do things like KPIs, set smaller targets, working group. I think they still have like budgets, but it's not really their mainstay. Does every organisation need to have a budget? If you see it as a straitjacket, no. But if you cannot translate your story going forward into a financial plan, then I think you're missing a trick. So my shortcut would be every business needs to have some idea of what their activities are going to mean in terms of cost, in terms of income, in terms of cash flow. That, for me, if you do nothing else, you're going to do that. What is a budget? It's about telling your future where you want your money to go and where it's going to come from itself. So, as I said, if you cannot translate your story into a coherent sense and put that into numbers, then I think there's something wrong with your business model, or your business model needs tweaking. Do I think every business needs one? Yeah. Does it need to be the main performance metric management system? No, but I think you need something in there to say what's the financial impact of what we're planning to do.
And I know, and we've talked about this between us, haven't we, that many business owners find it challenging to forecast what they think future sales will be. And there's all sorts of things going on around that. It could be you know, worried about committing to a target they don't achieve, or they just don't know where to start. But you describe forecasting as a bit like the Lego bricks of the business. So what advice have you got for someone who's thinking about building a budget, building a plan, and maybe, you know, thinking about forecasting into the future for the first time?
Okay, the first thing I would do is I would say ignore the financial impact, ignore the numbers. I know it's a bit of a heresy out there. So any finance people out there listening to this, I do apologise for that. So ignore the numbers and just make sure you can communicate your story coherently. So, for example, it's the great thing about this, Joe, is I'm drawing things I'm thinking about, we've talked about before. Every business has to have some idea what its end point is. whether that's 12 months from now, 2 years from now. So what's the end point? What does it look like? And then you're working backwards to say, this is my route map of how I'm actually going to get to that end point. That's the first thing I would suggest that anybody does. And you think about, clients you're going to engage with, what marketing resources you need, what staffing levels you need, what freelance. If you can't get that coherently structured, then the financing forecast can be difficult. Once you've done that, and then the way I would look at it is about, like, I know you're a prolific blog writer and you like writing lots of content, is when you're going to write something, I don't know what your personal style is, I would probably just say, write your story without any editing. Don't chase the sentences, just dump it out there, get it there, put it all together on a sheet of paper or sheets of paper or whatever your mechanism, put it there, go away, come back, and then you can relook at the story. Then translate that story into what the financial impact will be. And that's how I would go about forecasting. And it doesn't matter where you're not, this is not a predictor, this is not Mystic Meg, this is not like Russell E. Grant saying, this is what will happen. By the very nature, as soon as you produce a budget today, it's out of date the moment you sign it off. It's not about 100% predictability. It's about saying, this is my best guesstimate, if you want, of what I think will happen.
Yeah, and it's a guide, isn't it? And I think businesses should certainly be very clear in terms of what the costs are, what costs they need to cover, and where they stand with cash, particularly. So, and you're super helpful in the book as well around things like tax, what to do with, if you got a crisis when it comes to cash flow.
I like that one. I'm going to adopt that next time.
Yeah, a new term. And those things, some of the real fundamentals of the language and actually what's going on, in business accounts, but you make it really, really clear and really easy. So just hold up the book for a second for us. Let's have a look at it.
There's the mugshot. Can you see that? Okay?
There it is. Yeah. So it's just super practical, and as well as being really entertaining, and it's not super long and and academic. It's just straightforward, clear, and enjoyable. It's a really, really enjoyable read as well.
Let me show you something, Joe. An acid test here. Apart from choosing you, because I know you had great insight and you're going to BS, I also deliberately chose 2 or 3 people who were not finance people. That's not their background. Gave it to them to read. I knew they were going to tell me if it was complete garbage, they were bored to read it. I also gave it to my wife, by the way, who's definitely not a finance person. Love her to bits, but she's not a numbers and finance person. That's not her thing. She read it, and if she didn't like it, she would have told me straight away. So she found it nice, engaging. She gave it a thumbs up. And other people I gave it to read, pre-read as well, came back with some really nice, friendly, warm, comments as well. So I knew that I was onto, an okay thing there.
Yeah, you are definitely onto a more than okay thing. I think it's going to be invaluable for, I hope, many, many people all over the world. And you've said in the book, knowing your costs can make you more money. What did you mean when you wrote that?
In the great world, okay, in terms of people who are going to 10x their business and people are going to grow their business, a metric that's often used, and I'm not going to get too cliched here, is people say, look at sales and revenue, which is fine. That's an important metric, but it's all very well to generate, 100,000, 200,000, £1 million a year. But if it costs you pretty much most of that revenue to generate it, where's the value? Where's the return? Where's the profitability? Because if all you've done is recoup that outlay, to recoup the outlay and keep it going on, for me, that's a very poor business model. And perversely, sometimes selling things which are not such high ticket value, not such a high revenue, but actually doesn't cost as much, generates more profit. And ultimately, profit and cash are the 2 key numbers that any business owners needs to support themselves, support their families, pay for staffing, pay for costs, put something back in the kitty, afford to have that ambitions come to fruition. And I think just too many people focus on the top line because it's an easy number to do. And people can say, it's revenue. And I think that's just a ridiculous metric to focus on.
Yeah, it is. It's and by the way, if you're watching, if you've got any comments or questions for Mahmood, maybe you've read the book or you'd like to know something about the book, or let us know. Just drop us a note in the comments if you're watching live or on replay. We'll respond to all of those comments. So we'd love to hear from you. And I'd like you to explain a little bit, Mahmood, about why you recommend that there are good reasons for getting your tax return in early. What's that about?
Well, first of all, it's not because I'm on commission from HMRC that I get no financial recompense. I think it's this thing, Joe. The sooner you've done a task like your tax return, you know, okay, this is what I've got to pay or money I'm getting back. If you do it several months before the deadline, that gives you time to say, actually, I've got a tax bill that's slightly bigger than I expected. If I haven't put the money to one side, which I always recommend that you do as you go along, as you're invoicing clients, I've got time to know what I need to gather together. Number two, it avoids things like stress. There's nothing, and I've seen it, by the way, where, you know, for whatever reason, people don't necessarily complete their returns on time. They haven't put money aside to pay their tax bill. They put it in there, and the computer says, you owe this much money. And it can be a bit of a shock to the system, and it can induce anxiety. So a quiet life, an easy life. There's practical things like if you want to go for a mortgage application, the sooner you can get those returns done, the sooner you can get that leverage. It's just certainty for me is great. And it's a task that's put to one side. Do you really want to be spending in the UK your sort of November to Christmas time thinking about your tax return, getting stressed out? Life is too short for that.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, while entrepreneurs are thinking about all the numbers and the tax returns and doing the right thing and, you know, planning and telling the story, what about accountants? What do they do? You've got a chapter on what do accountants do, and just help us out with that. But what are they doing for us?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's a very thing, Joe. So I'm not going to be denigrate the entire profession here, but I think it depends on the business owners what they think they need for their business or what is important for their business here. So accountants come in many shapes, many sizes, many colours, many different things here. They are there. It's a bit like going to a doctor, and if a doctor doesn't know how to use a stethoscope, I'd be worried. So pretty much most competent, trained, skilled, experienced, and ideally qualified or part qualified accountants, because anyone who's like a graduate from university is not an accountant. I don't care what you say. You've got to have experience, ideally a qualification to back that up. So purely being an academic who studied accounting doesn't cut it for me. But what they do, they will help you with the compliance stuff, like making sure your returns get off to the tax office and the regulators on time. They help you actually tell you what those numbers are. They help you set up these systems in your business. They help you interpret. Ultimately, they do what you like them to do. Okay, and sometimes we don't know what we want here. So, you know, a good accountant is a good communicator. The actual physical transaction processing, machines take care of a lot of that. You still need that skilled expertise behind it. So it's everything from the recording the information to the information that comes out, how we read it, how we interpret it. Lots of people, I've come across this idea that, oh, I'll get an accountant when my business is much bigger. You don't have to employ an accountant full time, but you need somebody ideally who's an accountant or somebody who's got professional experience to advise you from day one. They don't have to be with you all the time. And I think also comes about the business's own ambition. I think some people think accountancy is not a necessary function. And I think it's an important function here if it's done correctly.
Yeah, and if someone's not happy with their accountant, it's fairly easy to change, isn't it? I think people think it's a big job because they've got all this data and information, but actually there are processes and agreements, professional standards of conduct, codes of conduct.
100%.
Easy. Yeah. So you've said that towards the end you said, I'm hoping that in having read this book, either from cover to cover or from having dipped in and out of it during the less busy times of your busy days, you'll have started not only to really get to know your numbers, but you're really starting to love them, and that this is part of the love story that you have with numbers. You also advocate, of course, having a plan and knowing, you know, where you want to be heading. So tell us something about the plan. Now you've got this brilliant book out, I Hate Numbers. What's the plan? What else are you going to do with it? What next?
Oh, that's a great point. So some of the hard work is done, And now what I'm trying to do, this is not a money-making exercise, by the way. So I think most people who write books, and you know yourself, Joe, you're not going to retire on the income. You know, we can't all be J.K. Rowlings or whatever. So for me, it's about, okay, finding groups, people who are likely to think the book's going to be useful, people that I think are going to be useful. It's me having approaches, talking to people, sharing the message on various mediums, talk to people on their podcasts. If anyone's listening and they feel they want to slum it by speaking to me, I'm more than happy to do that. And it's really just trying to get the book out to as many audiences as possible. So there's some formal marketing, advertising, and just lots of outreach as well, while still, you know, obviously running a business at the same time.
Yeah, wonderful. So I can't wait to see how it all grows and grows and grows, which it will. So Mahmood, thank you very much. Is there anything you wish I'd asked that I haven't asked?
No, I mean, I tell you what, John, this has been really quite an interesting experience, actually, because I don't think I've actually vocalized and spoken about the book in as much detail as I have with you. So it's really quite useful for me to go through, you know, the reasoning in my own mind about why it's done. I don't think so. I mean, look, folks, obviously, you know, let's do a little bit of a plug there. The book is available on Amazon. There's the link here. You just have to type in "I hate numbers," by the way, and you'll see my mugshot appear on the screen. If any of you don't like to buy from Amazon, I know there are people. I do have a stock of books, hard copy, which I'm happy to post out. It's fantastic value for money, which I will say. And I want you to help me to get on that Richard and Judy show.
Yes, the Richard and Judy Book Club. I think.
Sorry, book club. They're not on radio. Are they not on the TV anymore? Are they?
I don't know. I think Richard is, but not Judy. I think he's doing breakfast telly. The last time I looked, anyway. Who knows? Who knows what Richard Madeley's up to? Yeah. So wonderful. Well, thank you. You've been really generous in terms of talking about all these tips that are in the book, and I know there are many in the book besides these. So thank you very much indeed, and thank you to everyone as well. Thank you for watching. Let us know what you think. Go and have a look, buy the book, and yeah, leave him a review. Give him a really positive review as well, because that all helps. All right, see you soon. Thank you.
See you soon, folks. Cheers. Bye.